Tsubara Mudlark, simply Sue to her friends and family, was the only daughter born to Jedediah and Ferris Mudlark as the 20th of a total 26 children to date. Her family made their living as specialized traveling merchants, collecting and selling spell components to various arcane casters across the continent. It was dangerous work and not often the most glamorous of jobs, but there was always a steady demand for Mudlark's merchandise, and the practice was one of only a few that proved to support the rather large family. From the moment they could put one foot in front of the other, every member of the Mudlark household was expected to pitch in for the family business, and Sue was no exception, learning from an extremely young age the various ins and outs of the practice of parology, the study of arcane ingredients. The girl had a natural affinity for the subject, and being one of only 2 females in an extremely oversaturated male family, she learned to use such talents to her advantage very quickly. One of the main ways this was illustrated was in the various pranks she chose to pull on her unsuspecting siblings. Sue loved to experiment with the more obscure components her family would collect, and create all manner of mischief by which to torture her numerous brothers in proclaimed self-defense. But things got a bit out of hand once Sue began to take her pranks outside the familial circle, focusing instead on innocent bystanders for her own entertainment. Though all in good fun, her practical jokes didn't always sit well with their unfortunate victims, and Viscount Malcolm Humphrey Cavendish was no exception. The visiting noble was the target of one of Sue's more elaborately sinister tricks, in which she rigged a particularly potent stink bomb to the bottom of the man's carriage that not only stunk up the high-class vehicle's interior for weeks to come, but made the voices of all those unfortunate enough to inhale it increase to a hilariously high pitch. Unfortunately, such humor was lost on the Viscount, who, once discovering the culprit of his humiliation, pledged to have the young girl arrested for attempted assassination of a nobleman. Thankfully, a nearby mage by the name of Abraham Callenhad intervened on Sue's behalf, successfully abating the Viscount's rage and taking full responsibility for the girl's actions. In exchange for his kindness, he had one simple request: that he be allowed to train the gnomish girl to expand her observed arcane potential. Enthusiastically agreeing to his proposition, Dr. Callenhad and his new prodigy became near inseparable over the next few months, as Sue began to discover the true potential in her arcane abilities and talents. She showed so much promise, in fact, that not long into their tutorship, Callenhad suggested Sue take the application exam for an exceptional institution where he happened to be a professor, called Eastbrook Academy. Working tirelessly to prepare for the rigorous entrance requirements, and with a bit of help from a personalized letter of recommendation, signed and sealed by Professor Callenhad himself, Sue was barely able to make the cut for the prestigious Academy's 3rd-year class. Everyone was ecstatic for her success, her family's support having never wavered throughout the entire nerve-wracking process. But when it came to attending such an exclusive school, there were still a few hoops to jump through before Sue could begin classes. Both Jedediah and Ferris agreed that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for their young daughter, and thus they decided to completely liquidate their savings, as well as take out numerous loans from valued customers in order to pay her way through school. It was a worthy investment, they reasoned, as once Sue graduated and started her own practice, she would make up for the gold tenfold through her success. Therefore, with heavy purse in hand and a satchel of her family's rarest spell components, Sue and her mentor made their way to the large city of Castlebrook to begin her studies. The academy was just as impressive as Professor Callenhad claimed, and the education Sue received while in attendance was of the highest caliber and poise. Yet whereas many of her fellow students had received years of practice in the arcane arts before their current grade level, Sue was entering such a high-stakes environment with a mere 18 months of practice under her belt. Needless to say, the girl struggled. Not only was she behind in experience, but also in mindset. Sue didn't learn like the other students and preferred to enjoy herself more than was generally accepted amongst the students and faculty. She was labeled as an ignorant, hyperactive nuisance, barely able to make it through her first year at the academy. One of the only solaces she found throughout the entire experience as a student of Eastbrook was in her mentor, Dr. Callenhad's components class. It was the one subject in which she truly excelled. partially because of her investment in the practice and partially because of her deeper relationship with the professor that taught it. Fairly obvious at this time was Sue's developing crush on said mentor. The other notable joy Sue found in school she happened to come across in her zooarcanology course. In said course, students were to study the innate arcane abilities of various beasts and monsters, one of which was a mephitic skunk, a creature whose nauseous spray was capable of physically harming all who came in contact with it. But instead of experimenting on the helpless animal, Sue took pity on the poor defenseless creature, causing a ruckus distraction so that she could free the lab skunk and keep it for her own. Sue was crafty enough to hide the tiny creature away in her dorm for the rest of the year, but the entire incident and Sue's consequential secrecy led her to becoming even more alienated from her peers. Despite this, though, Sue and the skunk, who was soon dubbed Chanel, became very close over the next few months, and the tiny companion proved to be one of the few friends Sue had going into her second year at the academy. Unfortunately, though, Sue would not make it through the final year due to an accidental miscalculation in the creation of a new oratorical potion she was brewing alongside Professor Callie had for her senior year thesis assignment. One of her experiments went terribly wrong and resulted in the entire academic wing being flooded with highly toxic gas. Understanding her mentor's reputation was on the line for not only having approved her research, but neglecting to dutifully oversee her process, and understanding her already precarious situation within the institution, Sue took full responsibility for her mistake in order to save Professor Callahan's job and reputation, while she herself was expelled due to her insolence. Yet Sue was a tenacious individual who took the hit in stride, gathering what few belongings she had to her name, as well as her dear friend Chanel, and beginning to carve out a new life for herself on the streets of various towns and cities across the continent. Her sole purpose now is to earn back and repay the money her family invested in her. Sue has resorted to taking on any odd jobs that come her way, no matter how crooked the client. Her meager arcane abilities have proved extremely useful to several shady types in the criminal underworld, alongside her affinity for potion and trap creation. Though no matter how much she earns, it never seems to put a dent in the exorbitant amount owed for her tuition, even before calculating interest. All during this time, Sue has also maintained the ruse that she is still attending Eastbrook by sending frequent letters to her family back home. She claims to be doing so in order to prevent them from worrying on her behalf, but deep down such efforts are to cover up the massive blow to her pride her expulsion has left. Sue believes wholeheartedly that by refusing to return until she has earned back every penny her parents spent on her, she will be able to somewhat heal her wounded self-esteem and soften the blow of having so thoroughly disappointed her parents. And so, the adventure begins.